Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome into the GSMC Basketball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brice Lewis, and as you know we do here, we talk about basketball and everything basketball here on this podcast. And we have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about starting off with some LeBron talk as he won AP Male Athlete of the Decade. We're also going to talk about some news around the league, some updates, some injury reports, also some upsets in games from college basketball this past weekend. And also at the end of the show, I'm going to give you my top 5 backcourts from this decade that is about to come to an end. But we're going to get into some LeBron talk to start off here. And LeBron won the AP Male Player of the Decade, and it's very well deserved. LeBron is one of the pioneers of this new generation of basketball. He is a prime face of the league. He is considered the face of the league of the NBA right now. He has been a spokesman. He has been a honorable man. He has been considered the best player also for the league for a long time. And LeBron's done a lot for everybody here. And LeBron has a legacy that will carry him and his kids for years. You know, he has a kid in high school right now who's going to be a top recruit coming into college, also being maybe a potential top pick when he gets to the draft one day. You know, LeBron always talked about how he won't retire unless he can play on the same team with his son for at least a year, which would be a very history-making moment in the NBA if that actually happened. But, you know, LeBron, he is a guy who has done a lot for this league. He is a guy who came into the league out of high school and automatically was one of the best players in the league. It took a few years before we started maybe considering him best player in the league, but he definitely was on his way. You know, small kid from Akron, you know, coming out of St. Mary's High School and coming in being the first overall draft pick for a franchise in Cleveland that's never really been a great franchise in terms of historic prestige. And, you know, he helped turn that franchise around. He helped the economic stability of Cleveland when he came, because now they had someone that they could say came from our state. Ohio has people that actually mean something in the world. People would actually go to the games, travel to Cleveland to just watch LeBron James play. And that's the type of impact he had on the city and then the impact he's had on the league. He is one of the reasons why the league is at an all-time popularity high in the world of sports, why they get big TV deals now, why everything they've gotten is so big and so national. LeBron has created trends. You know, he created even though he wasn't the first to create a big three, it just shows that when he made a big three in Miami with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, then everybody started wanting to make a big three. He kind of created the mobility for superstars that maybe weren't happy where they were. And, you know, before you were always known to just stay where you were regardless of success because it was just considered the right thing to do. It was considered the best thing to do. And LeBron changed that narrative. You know, LeBron went outside of the box and he said, you know what, I'm going to go to Miami Heat because I don't feel like right now I'm going to win a championship with the teams that I assemble. Yes, we're going to win 60, 55 games. Yes, we're going to make the playoffs. Yes, we're going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and maybe even the NBA Finals. But are we going to be good enough to beat those top teams that are also assembled in the league? You know, and LeBron really just pretty much spearheaded all of it. And, you know, LeBron's a guy who has faced a lot of scrutiny because the whole Michael Jordan LeBron debate. Once you start challenging someone who people have solidified as the best player in basketball history, of course you're going to have a lot of people who criticize you to that level. Like, if he's the best player, why does he do this? Why doesn't he take the last shot? Why does he pass it? Why does he do this? Why is he not more aggressive? And the thing about LeBron is the one thing I commend LeBron on is he's always been the same type of player. He's never let the outside talk affect his play in terms of I'm going to become a different player just to appease the haters. Now, he has early in his career probably let the haters change sometimes how he may have changed his style in terms of how aggressive he was during a game from time to time. But LeBron pretty much has always pretty much been what he is. He knows what he is. He knows what he likes to do. He feels like this is the best way to play basketball, and that's how he is. And he has not let anybody change that. He's going to continue to do what he does because he feels like, hey, I'm considered one of the best doing this now. Why is it that I need to change now to prove to you guys that I'm one of the best players to ever play this game? I mean, we're getting to a point in his career where a lot of people are now solidifying him as the second greatest NBA basketball player in history. At least that. It just depends on where you place LeBron. Some people put on their Mount Rushmore, some don't. I feel like it's sometimes difficult because, when you talk about eras are different. People may feel like basketball back then was better or harder to play in than now. So it's easier for players to stand out and be good because the defense isn't as intense and there's more rule changes to help benefit offensive players. And, I feel like LeBron's one of those guys, though, who can play in any era because he's a big guy. You don't think if he grew up in that tough era with the Pistons in Chicago that he would have been a tougher player? Because you got to think about it. You just adjust to what the era is. If the era is more offensive prone, not as physical, then that's how the player is going to be. Offensive prone and not as physical. If the era is more physical, then of course the players are going to become more physical. It's just one of those things. He's a guy who's done a lot of great things. And he brought a championship to Cleveland. That was probably one of his greatest accomplishments in his career, bringing a championship to the Cleveland Cavaliers and winning for them, coming back from 3-1 against a 73-win team in the Golden State Warriors. That's probably one of the most historic comebacks, most historic finals victories he ever had. Even if he never wins the finals again, he's had some pretty impressive finals. We have to remember something about a lot of LeBron James finals. He was never predicted to be the favorite, I think, except in the Oklahoma City and the Dallas final. Well, the only finals I believe he was the favorite, and, I don't really get too much into the LeBron, Jordan debate. I didn't really watch Jordan a lot. Obviously, I was kind of born a little bit after him, and I really didn't start watching basketball until late after him. But, you have to take into account, just saying this for a little piece of thought. Jordan's teams were always the better team when he went to the finals. So all they did was just prove they were the better team every time they went. LeBron was usually the underdog in all those finals. There were very few times you could say he had the better team. But the accomplishment he had of getting to the finals for 8 straight years is something that I don't feel like anybody will ever do again, maybe. Because the way he's able to systematically join a team and now they're a top contender, and then he leaves the team and now the team is a lottery pick. It just shows the impact he creates on your franchise. He really can bring you to prominence. LeBron is going 17 years. His birthday's coming up. He's about to turn 35, I believe. And he's still one of the best players in the league. Obviously a lot of people want to say, Kawhi's coming up. Kevin Durant when he gets back. Those are some of the best players, maybe the Greek Freak. But we always have to remember something. LeBron did it for a long time. He was the best player for a long time. And when a lot of people started giving him the nod over Kobe and said, yes, he's the best player in the league, that's when, it really came to light that, he's done so much for this league. I truly believe LeBron's legacy is one of the best legacies that a basketball player can ever have in his career. Like I said, he's definitely deserving of the award for the decade because he has been a role model. He has done so much. He's been outspoken. That's the thing about LeBron, too, as a superstar. He's not just played basketball and just stuck to that. He's not been scared to step out and talk and try to commend things. He's created a school that gets top test scores now. LeBron has done a lot for communities. LeBron definitely puts in a lot of work to benefit other people because he understands his influence and he understands how he can impact other people. And so LeBron's also is just one of the guys that, you really never should disrespect. He's done a lot for the league. He's helped the league gain the popularity he's gained. And now whenever he retires, you have a lot of young, exciting players that he can lead the league to. There are still some people who feel like when LeBron leaves, what are they going to do? Is basketball going to be the same without him? You'll probably feel the impact without LeBron a little bit. but I think that's just an initial change. It's like when you think Jordan left the league, because I think when Jordan left the league, I think it was 01, 02. LeBron didn't enter to 04, I believe. 04 season, I believe. 03, 04 season. So there was a small gap where you didn't even have a LeBron or a Jordan. And then there's going to be a point where LeBron leaves and we got to see who our next big star, or do we already have our next big star? And it's just a great job for him. He's a great dad from everything I've seen. He's a great person. And, LeBron's just, again, one of the best players to ever step foot on the court and in the NBA and period, and just on a basketball court in general. But coming up next, we're going to talk about some news and notes, some news about some things that have happened over the weekend, some injuries, some games, things like that. Stay tuned.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about LeBron James winning the AP Male Athlete of the Decade and his accomplishments and his legacy in the league. But now we're going to get some news and talk around the league, starting with the fantastic 76ers Heat game from the night ago. It was one of the best games in the NBA season, but it was a very wild fourth quarter, especially. Everybody was going off. Butler, Bede, Simmons, Hero. Everybody was making plays. It was definitely a very exciting game to watch, especially Tyler Hero taking the game home in overtime. Definitely one of the games that if you have not seen, if you can catch it on replay, you should definitely go see that game. And it really just shows you the East, I think, is going to be one, even though everybody's focusing on Lakers, Clippers, the East is going to be very exciting at the top. Because the Heat are a team that now can compete with the top teams in the Eastern Conference. And a lot of people didn't expect that coming into the season, but they're slowly still proving it right now through the first quarter. Plus, we'll see what the Indiana Pacers will look like with Victor Oladipo coming back and the Raptors when they get fully healthy again. Eastern Conference looks extremely exciting. They look extremely fun this year. I think it's one of those things that I think we need to really start giving the Eastern Conference some attention because they have some great young players, some great young talent, and some great basketball that is yet to be played this year and going into the playoffs. Because the Eastern Conference, again, is not looked at as a very strong conference, at the bottom especially. But at the top, I feel like they're just as good as the Western Conference. A lot of talent, a lot of good players. I feel like the Eastern Conference is the conference for a lot of young stars and for a lot of just well put together teams that may not be superstar top heavy. Because if you think about it, Bucks aren't superstar heavy. Really, the 76ers only have one superstar in Embiid because Simmons is not there yet. The Raptors, you can say Siakam is their best player. He's not considered a superstar yet. You don't consider anybody a superstar. Their best player is Jimmy Butler. They're a bunch of teams that don't have the solidified superstar, so to say, but they have a lot of good players and a lot of stars that are beneath maybe that superstar level. And I think that's what makes it so exciting because you still have a lot of players that can get better and potentially become that superstar that everybody just kind of is like excited to see. And the Eastern Conference could slowly become more popular again over the years. And those two teams, the 76ers and the Heat, are going to be the main reason for it because there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of potential in those teams. And it'll be very exciting if there ends up being a playoff matchup between those two. That's a series that I definitely could think could go 7 games. And I definitely think either team can beat each other. That's truly how I feel. That is truly how I feel. Because both teams have showed the ability to play well. Both teams have showed the ability to compete at a high level and to play top level basketball against each other and against other Eastern Conference teams. And it'll be very interesting to see who comes out of the Eastern Conference this year and to represent the East in the playoffs. Other notes, D'Angleo Russel suffered a scary fall this past weekend when the Golden State Warriors were playing. Some people thought it looks like a very gruesome injury. Some people wondered what his status would be coming back from the injury. But later in the game, he would return to the game and was on the bench having fun. D'Lo is one of the bright young players we have in the league. Guy who a lot of people were down on after he left LA, thought maybe he was a bust. Obviously, we know about this little scandal with Nick Young. And he's definitely came back, and he's really proved himself. It's funny because he was the man in Brooklyn, led the Brooklyn Nets to a playoff appearance last year. Now he's technically the man in Golden State because Curry and Clay are out. And he's having to be the guy who basically, if he plays, is going to have to get the bulk of the scoring. And I only think it only helps him because it helps, continue to improve his stock and just show his importance of a player. He may never be a top point guard in a lot of people's minds in this league, but he's going to be a guy who's always going to be borderline all-star level point and definitely a starting point guard in this league. D'Angleo Russel, he's done a lot in his short career, and it's very interesting to see what happens. And we just hope that, he doesn't keep having scary falls like he did the other night, because we obviously want him to be healthy into the future, and we want him to still play basketball continuously into the future as well. Another young player that suffered a scary injury is Trae Young. He suffered his second ankle injury of the year, right ankle sprain. He did not return, and the Hawks lost to the Milwaukee Bucks. This season for the Hawks has been a weird one. We knew they were young, and we're not saying that we expect them to win like 50 games. But the way what the record is and everything, they really look really bad. Like they really look like they're the worst team in this league. And it's crazy because Trae balling, getting 30 a game almost. But it's just not translating. And then, you got to think about it. Herter was hurt. Trae was hurt. Collins was suspended for 25 games. They finally got everybody back. Then 2 games into that, now they're hurt. Somebody else, Trae, is hurt. It's just like that. Can the entire team stay healthy? This really could cost Lloyd Pierce's job because the team's not looking good at all right now. The Hawks' biggest issue is that they need Trae to score because they don't have a lot of scoring. They have scoring, but it's one of those not dependable scorers, but they have scoring, if that makes sense. Like if Trae does his thing, they have enough guys to score where they can win games that way. But if Trae doesn't have a good game or he's out, you can clearly see the offensive deficiency without Trae Young. Trae Young, obviously just having those ankle injuries. Obviously, we don't wish that ever upon any young player in this league, especially a young upcoming player with Trae, who a lot of people are still trying to battle Luka Doncic, in terms of a career, to show who was the best player coming out of that draft, in terms of the point guard position and in general in the draft. And I think that this is really big time for him because, there's been some rumblings coming out of line about Trae. And then, you got rumblings come out about Lloyd. And, these types of injuries don't help at all. You never want your best players to get hurt. So you definitely got to hope and see what happens. You wish Trae Young a speedy recovery. It's an ankle, so I don't believe he'll be out too long. I don't believe he's going to be out for a long time. So I don't believe it's anything that bad. But it's just his second ankle injury of the year. So you got to kind of monitor it because, he's had 2 ankles. You don't want him getting a third. I feel like since Trae's somewhat a smaller player, it's also kind of easier sometimes to kind of not see him, sometimes bang into him. And things like that could happen. It's just one of those things that you try to avoid as a player. Because, basketball is a game that is easy to get ankle injuries. You land wrong, someone steps on your ankle wrong, and then you turn it, and then boom, you're out for a couple of games. So you definitely want to make sure maybe it's the shoes he's wearing. You definitely want to make sure that, when he gets back, first you don't rush him back so he re-injures his ankle, and then maybe ligaments or anything else could be torn. But you definitely want to make sure that, hey, we know we need you out there. You're the best player we have, and we're going to try to get you out there as soon as we possibly can. So that's the update on Mr. Trae Young. And then lastly, Harden. was out for his team's last game for toe injury. I feel like it was a precaution. Sometimes in the season, especially early, when your best players or superstar players sometimes have injuries, you kind of sit your player out just to let him get some rest. I mean, there was questions about LeBron playing against the Dallas Mavericks, and he played in that game and they won. And it was because, he had that the groin's been bothering him for a while. It was just kind of like, do you sit him out and let him rest, or do you let LeBron play? LeBron wants to play. So, LeBron still went out there and played. He still went out there and did what he did. But, Harden, I think it's okay, to get that game off. I think it's good, low key, when players take these games off. Because, that's the reason why they even debate even reducing the schedule. Because really playing 82 games now is just kind of like not really worth it for a lot of players. Because usually now players are not going to play 82 games at all. And, this way sometimes having these little game 2-3 game stretches where you don't play can sometimes get you rested, get you healthy. Be like, okay, I took a couple of games off. My body's not as worn out after doing so many games in a row, traveling a lot. It just makes you feel better coming into the future games, coming into the postseason later in the season, because you want to preserve yourself and not injure yourself any worse than what you are. You never want to take a nagging injury and just try to keep playing on it and make it worse, especially if you're a star. But yeah, so that was all for this. But coming up next, we're going to talk about some more news and notes. We're going to talk about Zebo's retirement. We're going to talk about other things that have happened around the league. Stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we talked about the Heat and 76ers game, some injuries around the league, Harden, Trae Young, and D'Lo updates. So, we like to get into it, just give you some general news and nuggets about what's happening in the NBA at all times. If we can find it, we can get it. I'll do it right here and give you the information. But now we're going to get into some more news, more player news, more drama news. And speaking of drama, we're going to talk about the LA drama. On IG, after the Christmas Day game, Kyle Kuzma's trainer came out on Instagram and posted a story talking about how Kawhi will look sharp, Kawhi look ready to play, and Kawhi will look like the best player on the floor. And he said clearly that means he also took a shot at LeBron, saying LeBron didn't look ready. And so basically saying that LeBron maybe was overrated or isn't the best player in LA. So then Kuzma made a tweet calling a spade a spade. So during the Lakers practice before their game with Dallas, Kyle Kuzma went up to LeBron after practice and talked to LeBron about it. LeBron discussed it after practice, talking about, he talked to me about it. I don't really care what a trainer has to say. I mean, it is what it is. And, it's just some slight drama, But, it's never good when maybe there's a player or a teammate who's like part of your crew may have an issue with a certain player in the league or a team. I feel like that it was handled very well by Kuzma, the fact that he talked to LeBron about it. Because, some guys, they may not say anything about it. It's just like, it's whatever. Maybe they'll do some text messages and call it a day. He actually went up to talk to LeBron about it. So I think that was very mature of Kyle Kuzma. I don't think this is too much of a big deal, but, I think it just shows the debate. Everybody's trying to compare, LeBron and Kawhi. Everybody's trying to decide who's better. Still, you have people who try to like knock off LeBron. It's one of those types of things. You really can't look too deep in these types of comments. these are comments made by sometimes the most irrelevant people. The only reason why he has relevance is because he's Kyle Kuzma's trainer. But, I feel like personally it's not the end of the world. And, I think the Lakers, again, this isn't going to affect them in any way. LeBron's still going to be LeBron. LeBron's still going to be one of the best players out there on the field and on the court, actually. And, it's one of those things that just happens. You never have to worry too much about it if you're a LeBron guy. LeBron knows that you're going to have people who hate. You're going to have people who come after him. It's nothing new, but definitely if you're Kyle Kuzma or any player who's teammates with LeBron, you want to kind of keep people from your camp not saying too much, You don't want to cause any unnecessary issues within the locker room, any unnecessary chemistry drivers, potentially, or wedges in the team. Because you're all playing for a common goal. You all want a common, ending to your season, which is hosting a championship and bringing one back to LA. So that's really all in that Laker news. In other news, Zion Williamson has been seen in a lot of games. He gets a lot of media coverage during games for a guy who's not playing, but he has been seen taking jump shots pregame. He's been seen dunking pregame. And it's making people kind of ask the question, is he ready to return? Is he almost ready to return? Obviously, one of the biggest debates in the league has been if Zion should come back this year, if he should even play a game. Because some people like to look at it as, he could do an Embiid or a Simmons. Don't play your first year, keep your rookie eligibility, come back, compete for Rookie of the Year next year. And also, since the Pelicans are not that good of a team this year, that you don't really want to, do anything unnecessary. It's almost like you don't want Zion playing unless he needs to play. Because if he plays to start the season, you don't know how good the team's going to be. You just don't. Regardless of what people say, you don't know if he's going to be better or not. Now you kind of know what your team is. And so now it's kind of like, well, he's not on a really good team. So does Zion really need to play? Does Zion really need to go out there and potentially risk another injury? Risk anything that could further hurt him? And it's going to be interesting because I think the interesting thing about it was the injury was never supposed to be a long-term injury. So if you shut him down, it's kind of like you're shutting down a healthy player. But there was also some news coming out talking about the Pelicans are helping him learning how to walk again, run again. They're taking a very cautious approach with him. It's a little weird, but Zion says he trusts the trainers and the medical staff. So, honestly, there's really nothing wrong with Zion sitting out the entire season for me. Even though a lot of people may have looked forward to his debate this year, I think it's okay. Because I think at the end of the day, if you're a Pelicans fan, you rather have your best player, who you think is going to be your best player and the lead of your franchise for years to come, to be 100% healthy and ready, instead of having a guy who potentially might not be 100% healthy, might have some injuries, might potentially have some problems. You want to make sure that the guys that you're bringing in are going to be there for the long haul. And I think that's what they're doing right now with Zion. They're just trying to make sure he's going to be ready for the long haul. And that's all, like I said, that's all you really want. Besides, I know Pelicans fans might be itching for Ingram-Zion pairing because of how well Ingram has played. Ingram has technically played himself into a max contract, in my opinion, if he continues to play at this level. And then with him and Zion, you kind of have two star players now. Even though we don't actually know what Zion's going to be yet, if we're going off just potential, and what we've seen, you have two star players. And with those two star players, you have something you can build around. Pelicans have made some rumor mills saying they may trade Jrue Holiday, Lonzo Ball's on the trade market. So definitely, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Zion, seeing if he actually plays, continuing to see the warm-ups, him dunking, seeming like he's ready to play, but not playing. It's going to be a very interesting and testing time for the Pelicans franchise. Because like I said, you got to make sure you get this right and you do this right. You don't want to mess anything up, because if you do, a lot of people are going to be looking at this decision if Zion gets messed up as a big hit in the Pelicans franchise history. And lastly, there's the retirement news. Zach Randolph, Zebo, has announced his retirement. Zebo has played, I believe, 18 years in the league. He was a part of the world-famous grit and grind of the Memphis Grizzlies. The grit and grind. What a great motto. And that's what kind of player he is. He's a grit and grind player. Zebo never had hops. Zebo was never someone who was going to get off the ground that high. But for some reason, he never got his block shot half the time. He was able to still drop 20 on you a game. Zebo was one of the most talented in the post players of this generation. Zebo, he was a great guy on and off the court. Like I said, he meant a lot to all the teams he played for. He was a rugged guy. He was a guy who goes to war with you. And, you know, Zebo's had a great career. And you can only commend him for everything he's done. You can commend him for what he gave to Memphis, like I said, and even all the other teams he played for. A veteran who helped mentor the young guys. You know, he was a guy who, you know, he was a constant professional, constantly pro. And that's all you really ask for out of guys like Zach Randolph, is to do that for you. Then he gets you about 18-8, 18-9, 18-10, depending on the season. I believe he even had a 20-10 season, or close to it one time. And like I said, those teams, you know, with Marc Gasol and him and Mike Conley and Tony Allen, you know, those were some of the best defensive teams in the basketball. Offensively, they were a little challenged, but defensively, those were some of the best teams that you could put on the court defensively, which created the grit and grind in Memphis for many years. For many, many years. And I just want to say thank you, Zebo, for everything you've done for us. You've had a great career. I've loved watching you play, you know, and I only wish you the best into your retirement endeavors and hope you continue to do great things. And I hope you get back to the league because, you know, you gave a lot to the league and it's made the league better. So just want to say, hey, I appreciate it. Appreciate you a lot. But in our next segment, we're going to talk about some of my considered best duos in the league. Best two-man people in the league. It's a little different than what I'm talking about later. That's best backwards of the decade. I'm talking about right now who are the best duos in the league. No positions, just two best players on the team.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we talked about Zach Randolph's retirement, some Lakers drama, and Zion Williamson. So now we're going to get into some of my top duos for this season so far. It's not any positions. It's not my backcourt segment later. It's just top duos in the league, in my opinion, this year. I'll say I might give y'all about 5, maybe 6 duos that I think need to be recognized. This is in no particular order. This is just my thoughts and opinions on the best duos in the league. So one of the first duos I want to talk about is Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. As you remember, Kristaps Porzingis was a 20-point guy with the Knicks, 7-footer, can stretch it, hit the three, and he was a very matchup nightmare on the defensive end. Luka, about 6'7", 6'8", beautiful with the ball in his hands, flawless at scoring. This is why Dallas is one of the best offensive teams in the league, because they have one of the best offensive scorers in the league. They have 2 hard defensive matchups in the league, and I feel like they're only going to get better. They're both young, too. This isn't like they're older in their prime. Kristaps has hit his prime, and Luka Doncic has hit his prime. Both of these players are young and still getting better and still becoming better players. And people think Luka could be the face of the league one day. And Kristaps Porzingis can still be a top 10 player with his skill set and his size. So both of these players and both of these in Dallas really got them one of the best duos. And that's why they're going to be even though no one's predicting them to win, they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs with these two players. Because with Dallas, you're going to have to outscore them if you're going to beat them. It's not going to be a lot of 80 games or 90 games. You're going to have to score 100 plus to beat these guys because these are two of the best scorers in the league, and they show it every game. Sometimes if Luka has a bad game, Kristaps can pick it up, and sometimes if Kristaps has a bad game, Luka can pick it up. My next duo is more of an underrated duo, a duo you don't really think about, and that's Jamal Murray and the Joker. Jamal Murray is an up-and-coming point guard in this league. Murray is also one of those guys I feel like can get you 30 quicker than anybody in the league. When Murray gets hot, he's hot. He's one of the best players at his age, at his position, in a tough Western Conference who has a lot of great point guards. There's a lot of good things they do well. There's a lot of things that help them be successful. And I think that him and Joker, they really complement each other really well. Because you got that point guard threat, get you on the perimeter. Then you got Luka, big guy. He's more, some people consider him a finesse guy, but he's bigger than most players in the league. Can do some post-ups, can shoot the three, can shoot the mid-range. Great passer, great passing ability. That's one of the reasons why Joker is such a special player, is his passing ability. Both of these guys, they're a part of the resurgence of the Denver Nuggets being a competitive team yearly and potentially maybe one day becoming in a team that can win a championship, be a contender. I mean, they feel like even this year, a lot of people sleep on them because of the two Laker teams, because they feel like we're just as important, we're just as good, and they don't give us the same credit and credibility that we deserve when we've done a lot, with our team. They're very well built team, very well coached team led by these two players, Jamal Murray and Joker. They're going to be here for years to come, and they're going to probably be on Denver for years to come. And it'll be very interesting how great they really can become at the end of the day, because both of these players have tons and tons of potential to be some of the best players in the league. Another duo, I think, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. I feel like they truly won't take off until Embiid gets a jump shot. Not Embiid, Simmons gets a jump shot. Once that happens, I feel like they'll become unstoppable, because Embiid is already unstoppable as a player. He's bigger than everybody else, can shoot the three, can get to the paint, great offensive ability and moveset. Then you have Ben, who's one of the best finishers in the game. And he's like 6'10" playing point, so like if he's going against a 6'2" guard, he can take him in the post. And I feel like if Ben gets that jump shot right, that's when they're really going to take off and just be one of the most unstoppable duos in the NBA. Because they have all the potential in the world to be that. They have all the talent in the world to be that. That's why people are waiting for the 76ers to make that next jump. And a lot of people say it's Simmons. Now, Embiid just has to stay healthy and be Embiid. But if Simmons can give them more on the offensive end, especially in the playoffs, they have all the potential in the world to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in all of basketball. That's how much potential and talent they really have as a duo. They really have everything that you would want in a two-man group to be successful and for them to win. They just have to go out there and show it and compete at a high level, because that's what people want to see. Like I said, they want to see these two really grow to their own in this league and show that they're one of the best players in this game today. Because this duo is definitely already tough, but when they figure it out, they will literally be unstoppable. Another duo I feel like this is been a duo that I'm not going to talk about because, I put them in my top backcourts of the decade. So I'll go to this duo. Russell Westbrook and James Harden. Obviously, you knew they were going to be on this list because of the talent of both men. Harden is one of the greatest one-on-one players to ever play this game. Russell is just one of the best players in this game in general in terms of talent, explosiveness, skill level, determination, all of that. These guys play at an extremely high level. And, I feel like they're guys that really just come out there every day and they know how to play with each other. They've learned. It seemed like they've gotten figured out throughout the year. They're getting to a point where they can play with each other no problem. I believe that it creates a much better chemistry within the team because they know how to get the job done. And they know how to win in this league. They both had very high levels of winning success. Houston's had, I believe, almost 60 wins. I think they had 60 wins. And, the Thunder have had a lot of wins and made it to the finals before. All of them have final experience because of that finals they went to back in 2011. Even though they were young, they've had final experience. They've had top level winning experience. They've both won MVPs. This is just so much talent in this backcourt. There's so much potential in this backcourt. You can say this is one of the best talented backcourts in the league today. But not just a backcourt, a duo in general. And then I'm just going to talk about these two duos. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. You already know what they bring to the table. You already know both of these duos bring. LeBron, AD, I feel like it's the more just physically imposing duo. LeBron and AD are bigger, stronger, more skilled for their size. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, I feel like, are more skilled in terms of a mentality of how they go about winning, how they go about competing, how they go about playing at a high level, how they go about, things like that. They play very well what they do. And both of them, people are trying to debate this year who's the best duo between them. So far, Kawhi and Paul George are 2 up in that season series on the Lakers. But some people still are convinced that Anthony Davis and LeBron James are the best too. And these two guys and these 4 guys are what the league have. These are the best the league have to offer. You could say 3 out of 4 of these players are top 5 players. That's how much talent is in this duo of these 4. Playing on 2 LA teams, that's why it's so exciting, watching LA. The Clippers versus LA Lakers. But coming up next, we're going to get some college basketball. We're going to talk about the new polls. And we're also going to talk about some results and some upsets that happen in college basketball.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about top NBA duos, who I thought were the best duos in the league. And now we're going to get into some college basketball talk. We're going to talk about some scores, some upsets. Not too many major games in college basketball this past weekend. But we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about some net rankings, update their net rankings, and see where everybody's ranked. So, first big game that happened this weekend was Louisville and Kentucky. Louisville and Kentucky obviously is that big in-state game for both teams in the state of Kentucky since they're both within 90 miles of each other. And Louisville lost this game. The third-ranked team in the country lost to Kentucky, 19th in the country, 78-70, and probably one of the better games of the weekend, if not the best game of the weekend. This was a very intense game. They won in overtime. Kentucky did. They were able to just outplay Louisville down the stretch. So it was very important to see that because, it's great for Kentucky to get that type of chemistry going, be able to beat, because, they played a lot of good teams so far, and Kentucky lost a lot of those games. So this is very important for them to beat a team like Louisville, build more confidence in more big games like this coming up, because they have some big games coming up in the SEC play, like against Auburn, against Georgia, against others, maybe Tennessee too. So it's important for them to come out and win these types of games because these are the type of games you got to win in the NCAA tournament. In other news, Ohio State was upset again this past week by West Virginia, good old Press Virginia. They were able to make it a defensive game, and they were able to come up with a victory. So, that was a great job for them. They played well. They did what they had to do. And, that's why you love college basketball. Upsets happen a lot. Upsets happen all the time, really. And this was one of the big upsets. This is the second time Ohio State was ranked highly and got upset again. So Ohio State seems like in maybe games where they start getting that high recognition, there are sometimes some struggles. But I think that's just a part of the college basketball season. And you really can't put too much on it. But now we're going to get to some net rankings. And number one, again, still is San Diego State. Now, based off the record, they haven't played since the last time I talked about these. So based off that, that's why they're still number one. Like I said, they're a becoming team, a team that might be dangerous, very, very dangerous in the first round, dangerous when it comes to just wholehearted a tournament run. They could be if they stay this good, they won't be considered a Cinderella, but they'll be definitely a team people didn't expect to be as good as they were. Second is Kansas. Kansas took care of business this weekend. Nothing really too much changing there. They've pretty much done what they need to do. Continue to win. Obviously since they took care of business, Ohio State lost. They jump Ohio State because Ohio State's now number 3. But again, they lost to a good team in West Virginia. So I believe that was not going to hurt their resume that much. It shouldn't, at least, because Ohio State is one of the best teams in the Big Ten and in the country. They have a lot of talent and great coaching. So I don't see why that would affect them too much or too much in a way where it affect them just in terms of the net rankings. Butler is still rising up. They were 5, now they're 4. Butler is still rising up in the rankings. All Butler has to just keep doing is winning. They just got to keep winning and proving themselves. And people are going to know why not to mess with Butler. Those guys, they know how to ball out there. They play great defense, great coached. And they just play good team basketball. And that's what you really need if you're gonna win going into conference play, and also win going into the whole tournament coming up in March. We're about to hit the new year, so we're going to be about 2 months away when the new year hits from the NCAA tournament. So, and obviously that's when it gets really, really exciting in basketball land for college sports. Next is Auburn. They jumped from 7 to 5. Auburn just continues to win. They continue to handle business. Looks like if anything else doesn't slip up, they'll be going undefeated into conference play. Auburn, again, remember they made that final Elite 8 run last year. They're like I said, they're one of the more up-and-coming teams with Bruce Pearl at the head coach. A lot of people didn't expect Auburn basketball to be as good as they were. Auburn was always known as a football school, and seeing the progress they've made as a basketball program becoming better, now becoming a threat, now becoming one of the best teams in their own conference. It's not just dominated by Kentucky. You got competition in Auburn. And those guys are going to come out there every day. They're going to fight you. They're going to fight you out there and try to get a victory. You got number 6, Gonzaga. Obviously, they're number 1 in the AP. But, like I said, they're getting into their conference schedule pretty soon. We usually know what Gonzaga's conference schedule looks like. It's not always the best, but it's decent. And like I said, they just got to make sure they don't have any hiccups, along the way, because, you lose one of the games in the conference they're in, that could really hurt their net ranking. I feel like they're still going to make the tournament regardless, but it's just I feel like at this point with Gonzaga, it's just they have so much credibility as a good team for so long that they're viewed as good as Duke and them because they play them, they've beaten them and everything. So you're just kind of they're going to always be viewed in that highlight. They're always going to be viewed in that top elite program hype. So even if they lose a game or two, they'll still be in the tournament. They just may not get a number 1 or number 2 seed, which, obviously that's what you kind of want to aim for most of the time. 7 is Baylor, the Baylor Bears, still playing tenacious defense. I think they're top 20 in the country. They have a lot of talent out there. Baylor is a team that, you got to watch out for. They could cause some issues in the Big 12. They could win a lot of games, upset a lot of teams, and end up getting a top 3 seed in the tournament. So they have one of the best players in the country. And, you really got to, when you play Baylor, you got to be ready for a dogfight because those guys are going to fight you to the end. And you don't want to come out there and just think this is going to be easy, though, because you never, especially coming to Baylor, it's very crazy paying at Baylor. Baylor is a great home court advantage. And, they're just one of the best teams in the NCAA in general and period. So, congratulations to them. The Duke Blue Devils coming at 7. Duke obviously going to be good, led by Titus Jones, Trae Jones. And, it's going to, Duke's going to be there. We pretty much know who Duke is. We know what Duke's going to be. There's really no concerns. Even if they lose a couple more games, unless they have unless they start off pretty bad in conference play, we pretty much know Duke's going to be pretty solid going into March. It's just how solid are they going to be. Obviously, I also feel like this is also time to see what kinks and stuff you can fix. I'm sure that Mike Konchevsky is trying to figure that out. He's trying to see what to fix, what to change to better put his team in a better position to be successful, which as a great head coach you want to do for your program. Number 9, West Virginia. Obviously, they haven't moved up crazy, but they haven't. They're still 9th. They were 9th last time. They're 9th now, beating Ohio State. Ohio State is a great team, and they beat them. And they deserve all the credit and recognition in the world because they beat one of the best teams in their conference. And, West Virginia is just a team that has all the potential in the world to always make a run. You may never see them as title contenders, but they always have the ability to make a run when the tournament hits. So you definitely want to watch out for them. You definitely want to watch out for what they do. You want to watch out because they might cause a couple more S-sets before the year is over. And then finishing out the top 10 is Wichita State. Wichita State is always a good team. They play in the WAAC, I believe. And, obviously it's not the greatest conference in the world, but they're one of the best teams. And they show it every year. They come out there and compete, and they win. And they're going to make it to the tournament probably as long as they don't have any hiccups. And their team also is dangerous. Honestly, you can say every team that gets to the tournament is dangerous. There's just so many good teams, so many good talented players playing on one court, multiple locations. And it's why March Madness is always going to be the most exciting time of the year when it comes. But Wichita State finishes out the top 10. But coming up next, we're going to talk about my top NBA backcourts of the 2010s here on the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Coming up next.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment we talked about college basketball scores from the past weekend, and also we talked about the new AP poll that came out and updated y'all with the rankings and who's standing where, who's number one this week. Now we're going to get into some talk about my top backcourts of the 2010s in the NBA. These are guys that I feel like maintain a good few years of consistency, high level of play, playoff appearances, potentially a championship, and etc. Again, this will be in no particular order, and these are my top five. Number 5, Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, because they set a precedence in Toronto. They gave Toronto some of the best seasons under them. They played at a very high level for a country that, you know, outside of Vince Carter, really has not gotten that much recognition, has not gotten taken seriously in the basketball community. They gave them one of the best regular seasons. They gave them one of the best, you know, just performances. You know, they both became all-stars. You know, people will say they never got them over the hump or they can never beat LeBron James, but sometimes during these times, you always have that one player or team that always is stopping you. But for the most part, these guys, you know, they played their hearts out every day. They played at a high level. They competed at a high level, and they just did what they had to do to be successful out there. And so I definitely think that, you know, they deserve recognition for what they've done for the city of Toronto, country of Canada. And that's why when, you know, DeMar DeRozan got traded, it was very hard on Kyle Lowry because he understands the history and what they did for this country. And letting him go can kind of be difficult, and it can be tough, and so it's completely understandable. Next on my list, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. Obviously, this is probably one of the best scoring backcourts also in from this past decade. Obviously, Damian Lillard came from a small school and started exploding out the gate. Obviously, we know about his 2 heroic playoff game winners, but then they got that perfect other teammate in CJ. It's funny because people forget that Damian Lillard's first backcourt mate was actually Nick Batum before he got traded to Charlotte. And then they were able to open the door for CJ when they traded Nick, and he became an all-star. JJ McCollum was one of the best scoring shooting guards in the league. They're both one of the best backcourts in the league. And, you know, they've both done a lot for the city of Portland. Damian Lillard says he's committed to staying there and trying to win a championship there. I think CJ would like to also. There's going to be some debates, you know, obviously they can't get over the hump. Should you keep them together? Should you break it up? But both of these guys are very skilled, great 3-point shooters. You know, CJ is I would say maybe a better mid-range because that's where his sweet spot is, where Damian could score all over the floor. You know, he's obviously, like I said, we talked about that game winner he hit against Paul George and the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, his range is unbelievable. He is one of the best point guards in the game today. A lot of people would consider him a top 5 point guard. And deservingly so. And CJ McCollum is probably a top 5 shooting guard in this game because of what he does for him offensively, what he can do. He can have when he's hot, he's hot. You know, he's like I said, he's one of the best, you know, 2 guards in the league. And honestly, both overall, when you play these guys on a nightly basis, you know you're in for it. These guys are going to come for it. They're going to try to outscore you. They're going to try to outplay you. They're going to try to out hustle you. And these guys are just, you know, they're going to come out there and give it all on the line for the city of Portland. My next backcourt of the decade is John Wall and Bradley Beal. Obviously, John Wall, number 1 overall draft pick, coming out of Kentucky. All the talent in the world. One of the fastest players in the league for a long time. And then Bradley Beal, I believe he was the 3rd overall draft pick for the Wizards. Great shooting prowess coming out of Florida. It kind of worked well if you thought about it because, John Wall was not great with his shot early, so, he was more of a threat in the fast break and inside the paint with his moves. Bradley Beal was a better shooter. So if you need to stretch the floor, Bradley Beal will be the guy to stretch the floor for you. But it's been crazy to see the development. Obviously, John Wall's been hurt for the last year and a half, and he's missing this year too with his Achilles. But he was one of the most exciting watches to watch on TV. Bradley Beal has really developed over that time that John Wall's been out to more of a complete player. Obviously, knowing he has to carry the load with John Wall out, also having a young team, he's really developed into a guy who really can do everything. I think Bradley Beal is also one of the more underrated shooting guards in the game because, he can guard, he can shoot from all over the floor, 2 3s, mid-range, get into the paint. He's probably one of the more underrated guys in the league. Some people consider him a high B+ player. Some may consider him an A- player. But, you can't sleep on what Bradley Beal has done. And obviously John Wall has superstar talent. A lot of people feel like he's always been on the fringe of superstar. It's just, obviously him trying to get his jump shot down and everything. But with these two guys on the court together, you were in for it. You knew what they were going to bring to the table. You knew what they could have brought to the table. You knew it was going to be a ball game. Your point guard and shooting guard had to be ready to guard these guys because they're going to come at you. And then they're actually not bad defenders on the other end too. They defend. So you're definitely going to have to do what you got to do if you're going to beat these guys on both ends because these guys are going to come at you. And, they're motivated. They were young. They wanted to reach for something very high. Just bringing a championship to Washington, D.C. And, it will be interesting to see what happens when John Wall gets back and where they are as a backcourt going into the 2020s. In my next backcourt, Chris Paul and James Harden. This backcourt almost got them to the NBA Finals and beat Kevin Durant led Golden State Warriors squad. Even though the ending wasn't the greatest, you can't deny how great the team was on those two. Chris Paul, great. He's probably one of the best point generals that we've had because of what he can do. Obviously you remember what he did in the Clippers, but when he got to Houston, he also did a lot of great things. He showed it there, especially in his first 2-3 years there, was the ability to be able to move the ball, be able to shoot the 3 ball, be able to get the mid range, get to the paint. I honestly thought it was a great compliment to James Harden, especially when you did the James Harden comes off the bench because Chris Paul could really run the team now and more of I'm a general. I'm going to set the offense up. I'm going to give it here. And then James Harden, we know who James Harden is. James Harden is one of the greatest scorers ever scored. So, he's going to come out there. He's going to try to do his best, put you on skates, hit threes, and just do anything. This man either hitting threes or he's getting to the foul line or getting layups. And, obviously that's more because obviously Houston's more of an analytic-driven team. But with those two guys together, you can't deny how great they were. Like I said, not the greatest ending, but, sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's not always going to be the cleanest ending. But that those guys, they really help get Houston to a level that we don't know that they'll reach with Russell Westbrook yet. We'll have to see, but, I feel like that they deserve credit. Chris Paul deserves credit for what he did. James Harden deserves credit for what he did. My last backcourt, obviously, you already know, was Splash Brothers, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Changed the league. Revolutionized the league. Curry is mainly responsible, but you can say Klay too. People consider them maybe the first and second greatest shooters in NBA history. If that's the case, then you deserve to be on any top 5 list. Thing about it is that they may play for another 3-4 years together on a top level. So when they come back from their injuries next year, you never know. Even when the 2020s are over, you might still have to put Klay and Steph Curry in out because those guys done so much for the league. They're so impressive. Klay, they both complement each other so well. Curry is more of a guy who can create his own shot with the 3, where Klay is more of a set shooter, but they both are effective. And we know Klay can get hot when he's hot. Klay, 27 and a quarter, I believe. This man can get super hot. And honestly, with the 3-point shot, I can see you hit 5 in a row. That's 15 points. But that also could be a 15-0 run. That's 5 possessions. 5 possessions in the NBA can be at least 2 minutes, 2.5. So they're one of the most dangerous backcourts ever. They're one of the, maybe when they get hot, one of the hottest backcourts ever. And like I said, they changed the game. And we have to further appreciate them and their greatness. It's because they did something that not a lot of people can do. And we always have to give them appreciation and praise for those things that they did for the NBA. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. And also, if you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, thank you and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.